I say good afternoon.
Good
Hi,
afternoon.
everybody. My name is Jacqueline Peterson, and I am the advisor to the president for institutional diversity, equity, and inclusion at Providence College here in Providence, Rhode Island. And I have served in this role for a little over 2 years. How it came to be is that I am a retired vice president emerita from the College of the Holy Cross in Worcester, Massachusetts. And at my retirement 2 years ago, at that time, the president of Providence College was in transition with respect to their CDO. And so Father Shanley reached out to me, knowing that I was now retired and have considerable experience in the area of diversity, equity, inclusion. He reached out to me to find out if I would come on for a bit of time. At that point, it was less than a year. Um, as a transition consultant while the college searched for a new vice president for institutional diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that time, that year or 6 months or a year, expanded and into where I am right now. And partially that just had to do with wanting to conduct a really vast national search to find the best candidates to step into the role here, which at Providence College will have only been the second CDO that the college has had. The inaugural CDO was hired in, I want to say, 2014, and then this is the position that they were looking to fill. So Father Shanley asked if I would stay on and help the college community really develop a framework for IDEI, which would identify operational goals and objectives that aligned with the college's strategic plan, which is PC 200. And the second goal of the three goals in PC 200, second goal talks about equity, justice, inclusion, belongingness. Really, basically, the theme of that goal is um, Providence College moving toward an anti-racist, fully embracing of diversity, creating a sense of belonging, and becoming a beloved community. So that's a big commitment. It's a big commitment for an organization to look at itself and identify where there are issues related to systemic racism.
Absolutely, and thanks so much, Jackie, for not only giving your background and just kind of all of that, but also really illuminating the direction that the college is trying to go with the PC 200 strategic plan and the particular goals around building that beloved community. And so, a question that I wanted to ask you, as you started to talk about it a little bit, was part of your goal in coming from the Holy Cross to be an advisor here on diversity, equity, inclusion was creating that framework. So can you talk to us a little bit about that framework? I know we use it a lot in our office of institutional diversity, equity, and inclusion. But could you tell us a little bit more about what that framework is? How does it connect to other parts of campus? Because it's not just an isolated thing. The goal is to make sure that we're connecting across all different campus partners.
Absolutely. You're right on target, Nick, with the importance of DEI work, that it is an organization wide type of work. It has to be not only top down, but bottom up and left to right. And it has to address the infrastructure of the organization, which means that it is looking entirely at all of the divisions, departments, offices, areas of an organization. So the framework that we have been operating under here really is an adaptation of the American Association of Colleges and Universities, AACU. They actually introduced a model, some at this point, over 5 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago. And their model was around inclusive excellence. And so the framework that we're using has been adapted from that particular model. So we're looking at 5 focus areas, and the justification for 5 focus areas is that in doing so, we think that we have identified almost every aspect of this organization. So the first one is about infrastructure, and that is basically looking at the college's policies, practices, protocols, the division or the decisions making that happens at the leadership. Are those decisions, are the guiding principles that upon which the decisions are based, were they created with, through an equity lens? And so that is why institutional infrastructure is one of the 5 focus areas that needs to be looked at. Secondly, we have a second area that is called campus climate or climate and intergroup relations. And that really is basically, what is the climate? What is the culture like at the institution? And how is it assessed in order to inform any types of changes that need to happen to make it consistent with the goal of equity and inclusion? So that's what would be if that's the goal, what are the actions that are taken to make sure that we are consistently monitoring the campus climate for inclusivity and equity? The third area is looking at the curricula, both formal and informal. So what's happening in the classrooms? Is the curriculum in the classroom, is it diverse? Are topics, our textbooks inclusive of different cultures? Pedagogy. Is pedagogy being aware of, is it equity minded? Is it being aware of the fact that we are in a diverse community? So curriculum, both informal and formal, inside and outside of the classroom, is the third area. Then the fourth area, and I just need to, sometimes I take these, there's no particular order, but sometimes I lose my train of thought because I'm trying to remember the order. So the fourth area has to do with structural diversity. And that is the folks that make up this institution, recruitment, retention, what do we have in place to ensure that all people, particularly those who are in underrepresented groups here on campus, thrive? How do we increase the diversity? What are our plans in place for increasing the numbers of underrepresented people in both students, faculty, and staff? And then most importantly, what is in place at the institution to ensure the retention of people from all backgrounds? And then finally, okay, what is our fourth area? Curriculum. I have to think about this. What is our fifth area? Oh my God, why am I losing my train of thought?
Student learning and development.
Thank you.
You
Oh, I'm
did a,
proud of you. You
you
know
did a
this by
fantastic. I know I do know by heart, but no, you did a fantastic job reeling those all off. But student learning and development is our last one.
Student learning and development. Okay, here is really key. What does the college have in place as the students come in to really help students to be introduced to um, in cultural diversity, to develop their skills, their competencies, where cultural diversity, equity, and inclusion is concerned, and to hopefully leave um, Providence College after 4 years in a much stronger place with respect to cultural competence and cultural awareness and cultural intelligence. I guess that's the way I would say it. You know, their CI quotient, their cultural intelligence quotient. Um, by the time over a 4 year period. So what types of approach, what is the approach that the college is taking to reassure that that is happening and reinforce that development for students over their 4 years here? So those
Yeah.
are the five areas. And what we have now, we have a steering committee that has been working with those five areas and um, have formed into working groups that will have and will continue to reach out to other members of the campus community to begin to put this framework, put some, I guess, put some meat on the skeleton of this framework that we've created, and making sure that that aligns with the PC 200 strategic plan.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jackie. One of the things that when every time I think about the uh, strategic areas, I think about how robust they are. And one of the things I think is really impressive is just thinking about how wide it is. And so one question that I wanted to ask you was, given how wide, our focus areas are and how robust they are, can you talk to me about maybe a success or two that you've seen just by utilizing this framework? I think in the past, oftentimes the thought of DEI work just being, only allotted to one office, and it's just on that one particular group of folk to make it happen for something that is organization wide. So tell me how the change in approach and just using this framework has been successful. Maybe you could tell me,
Okay.
one example of that.
Yeah, sure. A couple of examples. Let's go to the infrastructure piece for a moment. Just picking up on your statement or your question. I think by the fact that the college has started to identify in all areas of the college, um, I would call them point people or liaisons to IDEI work. And for example, in the School of Arts and Sciences, there is an associate dean position and an aspect that was created not too long ago. And an aspect of that person's role, one part of that person's role, is to really focus on um, areas, DEI related areas within the School of Arts and Sciences, but obviously that is something that spans across other areas of the campus and as well. Um, the School of Professional Studies has also identified like a point person who is a liaison to DEI work that's happening on campus. The provost office created a position which is called the visiting instructor for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that person's role is really to be an internal on-campus resource for all faculty to, to assist faculty in looking at inclusive pedagogy, inclusive curriculum, etc. Within the area of athletics, as you well know, there was a position created to work on education and training with a heavy emphasis on our athletes and the athletic department, but also liaisoning with IDEI and doing that training and education for a broader base of the student community. Um, so those are a couple of things. I know I'm probably missing something by now, but looking at the infrastructure, putting those types of pieces in place so that diversity is crossing, it becomes an integrated as opposed to a siloed endeavor, is integrated across the campus.
Absolutely. And I think, for me, when you talked about athletics, I can definitely attest to the success of the framework in my
Of
own
course you
position. And so I do, one thing that I really appreciate, not only the intentional design of it, but I think even just campus wide, recognizing that putting those pieces together, right, can create, that the engine moving forward, right? And once we start to have all those things ready to do the work, we can continue to move in a direction that we need to, and of course, after this last spring and just the national unrest, we as a country and we as a college, have been dealing a lot with trying to, reconcile our own past and really sort of take hold of where we want to go and no longer really being as complicit and really being, more forthcoming and straightforward as we address some of these, deeply rooted issues that have been, on our campus, for years and years. Me as a former student and now working here still, continued. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask you was, thinking about this, you know, national uprising and just, this continuation, even as we go into this election cycle, how has the work either shifted or changed as a result of this new attention? One thing I've noticed is that I think more people are getting on board. But also with that comes some difficulties and challenges. So, what have you noticed has been some of the changes or some things that have been different, after the death of George Floyd and just our national uprising, and sort of our national reconsciousness of our sort of racial injustices?
Yeah, all of those things. I mean, I think that it has become um, the energy around this, the momentum around justice issues, racial justice and social justice, and across it, broadly speaking. I think there's been a renewed and a resurgence of activism around these issues nationally, as we can see. And one of the differences that I would look to, as compared to in the the 1960s or the 70s or and beyond, is that you definitely, and you can see it is so visible that it is a multicultural kind of uprising, if you will, across the board, with people from all racial backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, all identities coming together to say, hey, something needs to change. And it's not just the typical preaching to the choir. It's this awakening. That's what I call it. It's like society as a whole. I don't know where everybody's been, but it's like they've been, sleeping under some blanket or some cloud for so many years, and all of a sudden something came and shook up their sleep, and it's this whole awakening. And it is amazing to see But with that comes a great deal of tension, and it comes with a great deal of discomfort. But I think, as the saying goes, I think that there are more folks who feel the importance, the imperative is more than an importance, it's an imperative to lean in to address these issues, and understanding and knowing that you're going to have to come out of your comfort zone, that you're going to have to really be able to, um, deal with being uncomfortable.
Yeah,
That's,
and one thing that I think you bring up is the ways in which this is so multifaceted and really involving everybody. And I think one of the things that I hope that we can kind of continue to learn from and take with this as I ask this sort of final question is sort of this optimism that we have, right? Recognizing that we're still a long way to go, right? We've talked about some successes of where we are. We've talked about how we've been able to sort of reconfigure the approach that we take and how multifaceted and dynamic it is. And there's so many ways you can learn more about that on our website and so many other different spaces. But I guess, Jackie, if I could ask one sort of last question is how do you personally stay, optimistic and hopeful in times that can seem really challenging? And what sort of words of encouragement or optimism do you have for, our campus and other folk that may be listening that are really struggling in this time? Because while it is certainly, in my eyes, really exciting to know that more people are coming to the party, so to speak. It's also very challenging because we're unearthing a lot of the
right.
deep pain that's there in some of these really deep systemic issues. So how do you stay motivated, and how do you stay optimistic during these times?
Well, obvious, my first um, response to that and is unwavering faith. That's that's my first. That's where I start. you know, I start with my faith, and um, it's been a long journey. I have myself walked through this journey of um, being, a trailblazer and breaking down walls and glass ceilings and this and so forth in my adult life, and even in my adolescent life. I've seen what my parents have endured and have a great understanding of what their parents endured. And it is just this resolve that as long as I am breathing and able to function, I am going to contribute to continuous growth. And does it feel like sometimes that you take, 2 steps forward and 5 steps backwards? And does that become discouraging? Yeah, it does. But I think you have to still rise. There's a song out there. I think it's Yolanda Adams, or um, it could be CC Winans, but the song is, yeah, and still I rise. And that is really my motto. That's what helps me to continue to go. And then we can't negate the fact that there has been progress, and there are some successes. And even though the small successes, we shouldn't just, think that they're irrelevant and insignificant. Even the small successes, we should celebrate. And so I think trying to do that, or really looking in that way, helps me. And also fundamentally, my nature is to first think goodwill. I have to begin my day with, okay, first assuming goodwill. Sometimes that gets shattered pretty quickly, like 45 minutes into the day.
I understand. I
And
understand that.
back to be like, what was I thinking? But at least it is important to begin my day with that sense of optimism and that sense of faith in myself, faith in other people. So those are the things, some of the things that I think help to keep me grounded. Um, and I think that really knowing that you're helping to hopefully pave the way for those that are will to follow. And I think about that. I think about with children and grandchildren, that you have to keep, there's no choice but to continue to do this work and to continue to make progress and push forward to to pave the road for them. I remember when during the summer with the Mr. Floyd's tragedy and so forth. I remember talking with my dad, FaceTiming my dad, um, and my dad is 91, and we were just looking at everything that was going on and the folks that were just outraged and protesting all of this. And he too definitely recognized the different hue of the crowds as they gathered. And he
Mhm.
said to me, he said, you know what? Maybe, just maybe, this time will make a difference. Maybe something will happen. And I thought about that and I said, okay, here is a 91-year-old person who himself has seen his share of adversity, who himself has also been a soldier out there in the army for justice. And he is still saying, just maybe we're making it around this time. So how can I not, take on that same attitude?
Absolutely. And, such a fantastic way to sort of put a bow on our conversation is that, that recognition of where we've been and that hope for where we can go and recognizing that we all play a part in that. And seeing, personally for me, working with you, seeing, the work that you put in every day to pave the way for others inspires me. And again, thinking about how it's our duty to continue to push forward
Yeah.
is something that really resonates with me so strongly. So, Jackie, I truly appreciate you spending the time with us today, sharing your words of encouragement, talking to us about some of the directions of institutional diversity, equity, and inclusion, and just really kind of spending some time with us here today. So I appreciate you. I'm sure the listeners and viewers will appreciate your time, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Oh, thanks, Nick. This has been great. I'm glad that you have organized that. This is a creative way for folks to be able to discuss this really important topic. So thank you for asking me to do it. And right back at you. I appreciate you, Nick Sailor.
All right. Have a wonderful one. All right.
All right. Thanks. Bye.